They're not the government. The Democratic Party is not the government. It's a private organization. They can do whatever the fuck they want ultimately. But all this takes place within the context of, a constitutional framework. What Trump did is threatened the constitutional framework itself.
I don't know what Donald Trump thought when it came to that. I think that there are some legalities with how our country runs that do allow for certain procedures. A lot of them are really wonky, and they get into the weeds.
What does that answer even mean? There are some legalities with how our country runs that allow for certain procedures. Why, how does she not know? Why would Trump, say so many things about, Mike Pence has to come through for us. Mike Pence has to have the courage to do what is right. If he didn't think that Mike Pence had the authority to overturn the election. Everything the Republicans have done for the past, 2 weeks about immigrants eating cats in Springfield, after all of that misinformation, promoted by Trump himself and J.D. Vance, no shot should a Democrat ever have to come to an immigration conversation, and there's no reason they should concede anything unless their opponent completely disavows all of that stuff, because that is unhinged. The Democrats don't have a majority in Congress right now. The issue is that Republicans are so pathetic that they will do anything to appease Trump, so they will open their asshole and let Trump fucking fuck them so hard that they
I think there's no doubt that we are worse off economically by all measurements today than we were in 2018 or 2019.
I'm sorry, real GDP growth is higher than pre-COVID projections. Really?
Hey everybody, tonight we're debating Harris or never Harris. And
all right, let's see.
Right now with Stephen's opening statement. Thanks for being with us, Stephen. The floor is all yours.
Yeah, I think that right now, one of the most important things in America, and I think for the world, is that we all kind of get back on the same page factually about stuff that's actually happened. So I think supporting Harris is important for a few key reasons. And I think the first one is that right now, the Conservative Party in the United States is completely and totally divorced from any type of factual reality. I think that the Democrats,
and have been for 4 years,
policies are at least more in the real world than the Republicans are. If you want, you can look through the Dominion lawsuit against Fox News, where Fox News literally says over and over again, we're going to lie about the Dominion machines. They do lie about the Dominion machines. The reason why they do that is to keep up with the other false conservative media that's lying about the Dominion machines. And you can see this over and over and over again, whether it's all of the allegations of voter fraud, where Sidney Powell and Giuliani have said that they lied about it.
As a politician, you have to be aligned with that. You have to be aligned with the Trump narrative, or else
not true.
Trump will
I just think that the
hold
fact
you
that
accountable.
No longer
We'll
based
say
reality is a huge threat to really the world, because it makes it so we can't live in the same reality, so we can't even discuss policies, and instead we're wasting all of our time debating conspiracies. And that's, I think, one really good reason to support the Democratic Party. On policies, I think supporting the Democratic Party or the Harris candidacy is also important, because Trump has no policies. Every time he opens his mouth, he just says some random crazy stuff. He's talking about a 10%, 20% tariff on all imports. I don't even know if he fully knows what a tariff is. At times where we're worried about things like inflation, the idea of
either he doesn't know what they are,
or
he's lying about them.
Every single good that you buy is
inflationary.
Absolutely insane. I think that in terms of economic policy or in terms of domestic policy, I think that the Democrats are much more able to get...
He should also nail down on the central bank independence here. Donald Trump wants to have some say, he said, at least some say over interest rate decisions of the central bank, which is a really fucking abhorrent policy that is also likely inflationary, because politicians have a pro-inflationary bias.
Real stuff done rather than just kind of pander to an audience. For example, Trump ran on building the wall. He had 4 years to build the wall. He didn't build the wall. He had Republicans in both halves of Congress. There's really no excuse for his failures other than blaming the people around him, which I don't know why he wouldn't just do that again the next 4 years that he's in. Spoiler alert, he will do that again. You compare Donald Trump's, saying we're going to do something about China to Biden passing the CHIPS Act, because he was able to actually be an effective leader and get Congress to legislate an actual bill. Or if you look at how the Democrats tried to tackle the border problem, where they had a bill and Trump shot it down because he wants to keep the border open for election season. I think it's clear that the Democrats win when it comes to actual policy. And I think Donald Trump as an individual is an abhorrent, amoral, un-American, unpatriotic, treasonous person who tried to weaponize the DOJ. He tried to create fake slates of electors in order to overturn the electoral vote. He basically cheer-led violence on January 6th to try to pressure legislators to not certify the vote. And he tried to subvert the peaceful transfer of power, only leaving when, at multiple stops, there were other people inside of the administration that basically stopped his attempt to, take over power in the United States to prevent the actual outcome of the last election from coming to fruition. So I think that Harris is a
which I have seen 3 times because my internet cut out. But we're fixed now, okay? It's good, okay?
Very, very easy choice over Trump, basically no matter which way you look at it. But yeah, that's my argument.
You got it. Thank you very much for that opening, Stephen. And folks, if it's your first time here at Modern Day Debate, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, as we have many more upcoming debates. And we're going to kick it over to Kim. Thanks for being with us, Kim. The floor is all yours for your opening as well.
Thank you. The reason why you should not vote for Kamala Harris, I think the biggest reason why you should not is to protect democracy, the very thing that Democrats claim they're constantly trying to protect. Meanwhile, Vice President Kamala Harris ran for president in 2020. She ended up having to drop out early from the race before the first primary vote because her candidacy did not generate any significant support among the Democratic electorate. There was a lack of enthusiasm. There was a lack of confidence in her leadership. Nonetheless, even without all of that support, she ended up being selected by party elites to be the vice president for Joe Biden. Furthermore, then what Democrats
selected
have
by
done
Joe Biden, they
is they
choose the
have
vice president,
squashed
right?
any ounce of the ability to have an election. They squashed any candidates that were challenging Joe Biden, unlike Republicans who actually had a primary, trying to primary Donald Trump. We saw numerous candidates going after Donald Trump. Nikki Haley ran a very
Yeah, how well did that work? I mean, New Haley won New Hampshire, I guess,
campaign
because a bunch of
against him, so
Democrats
Ron
registered
DeSantis.
as Republicans.
Meanwhile,
But
Democrats actually buried any possible counter to any alternatives to Joe Biden.
oh my God, what? I swear, before the stream started, I watched the opening statements and I made sure it didn't lag at all.
Then decided to take the guy out to pasture, essentially pushing him aside against his will. They then had no open primary in order to nominate Kamala Harris as the
Because
candidate.
there were like 100 days till the election at that point. There's literally not enough time to set up a primary.
And they instead, once
in all
again,
50
in the
states,
same very
no
way
shot.
that they made her the vice president candidate, is that the party elites from a very top-down structure, without the support of the American people, without the support of their...
In other words, the delegates who had previously voted for Biden, once Biden dropped out, voted for the person that Biden endorsed. Wild concept.
Democratic
Wild
voters
concept.
decided to anoint Kamala Harris as the candidate. If you care about democracy, even if you like Kamala Harris, to support that type of anti-democratic behavior.
I don't understand. Anti-democratic is a political party. It's a private organization. They can do it. They're not the government. The Democratic Party is not the government. It's a private organization. They can do whatever the fuck they want. Ultimately, if you don't, I mean, if you really don't like it, you can vote a different party. But all this takes place within the context of a constitutional framework. What Trump did is threatened the constitutional framework itself. What the Democrats are doing is not threatening that framework. That's the difference. Like,
behavior is signing off on this happening over and over and over again. To agree to this, maybe you like Kamala Harris today, maybe she is the person that you think you agree with her policies, but the fact that Democrats have done it in this very undemocratic way, you're paving the way for this sort of authoritarian top-down form of leadership that the next time the candidate that you don't like could end up being the one nominated. Although I will say that the vast majority of the voters do not like Kamala Harris, so she's not a particularly popular candidate. Since
Biden dropped out, she's relatively popular. She's at like 45% approval rating
in the history of this nation.
Almost a majority.
Since polling has come out with a net negative rating of -17. So, Kamala, if you care about democracy, if that's something that you genuinely want to preserve in this nation, then you cannot support the way that the Democratic Party has gone forward nominating their candidate.
Thank you very much for that opening as well. Folks, I want to let you know we're going to have roughly 1 hour and 45 minutes for tonight, so do get your questions for the Q&A in early. You can do that either tagging me in the live chat with @ModernDayDebate, or you can use the super chat that will push your question to the top of the list. We don't want insults toward the guests. We want sincere questions. Thank you very much. Floor is all yours, Destiny and Kim.
Yeah, I guess the first thing is, do we agree that Donald Trump thought that Vice President Pence could choose him as the winner of the last election?
I don't know what Donald Trump thought when it came to that. I think that there are some legalities with how our country runs that do allow for certain procedures. A lot of them are really wonky, and they get into the weeds.
What does that answer even mean? There are some legalities with how our country runs that allow for certain procedures. What the fuck? What a, like, literally, like, teenager trying to, like, fill out a fucking word count in an essay. Why, like, how does she not know? Why would why would Trump, like, say so many things about, like, Mike Pence has to come through for us? Mike Pence has to have the courage to do what is right. If he didn't think that Mike Pence had the authority to overturn the election. Like, what?
So there is maybe a possibility that he thought something could happen, but
Okay, are you aware that Trump and
Or maybe he did it. Maybe.
wanted Pence to break the law in Congress, the Electoral Count Act? They wanted him to break that law to choose Donald Trump to remain president.
once again, I'm not sure if that was breaking the law or if that was using an obscure procedural rule that would allow for something along those lines. That has been debated by experts. I am not an expert on that, but experts do debate that.
To be clear, experts don't debate it. Are you aware that Eastman himself said on first pass?
How do you know? Why do you say that experts don't?
Well, I think she's misunderstanding that what was disputed was whether the Electoral Count Act was constitutional. The reason Eastman thought Pence could break the Electoral Count Act is because he thought the Electoral Count Act was unconstitutional. But no one at all disputes that he wanted Pence to break the Electoral Count Act. Where are the I have the memos linked somewhere. Like, literally, Eastman breaks down exactly how Pence should break the Electoral Count Act. His plan was just that the Electoral Count Act was unconstitutional. That's what he thought. Yeah. I have it linked somewhere, I think.
Debate that when they do debate
because
that.
there are none. Find them and bring them to me, and I will
Jacobs
destroy all of them. No real expert. No, there are none.
That there are any experts that debate whether or not there are some procedural rules that would allow for certain things to happen during those procedures. You don't think that there's any expert out there that was arguing that? Because I heard numerous experts saying that there was this, obscure rule that would allow something.
The Electoral Count Act, which is likely unconstitutional. Yeah, this is the piece we believe is unconstitutional. Okay, but judge is an obscure legal theory. I know. It's obviously dumb, but, like, she's not even... This part is not disputed at all. This part is not at all disputed. They wanted to break the Electoral Count Act. They wanted to break the law. They just thought the law was unconstitutional. So they thought they would have basically been allowed to break it.
Something like that to happen.
Maybe from other countries, but not from the United States. No. There were no serious experts arguing this. That's why Eastman himself said that if it went to the Supreme Court, he said they'd probably lose 7-2, then he said they'd probably lose 9-0.
7-2. So 2 of the Supreme Court justices, do you not think that they know the laws of this country?
Eastman was asked...
What? And then later he amended it so it would be... 9-0. But also, if the Supreme Court rules something 7-2, then that means the law of the land, as interpreted by the Supreme Court as a whole, is with those 7 justices, right? Like, this is but yeah, here's like a memo that Greg Jacobs sent to Mike Pence explaining why Mike Pence can't do this, and it breaks down exactly how why the plan was not constitutional.
Asked on first pass, do you think that they would win in the Supreme Court? And he said, we would probably lose 7-2, and then he admitted they would lose 9-0.
But actually, we don't know because it never went to the Supreme Court. But had it, maybe it would lose 7-2. I'm not saying it would have won, but the fact that there maybe would have been 2 or 3 justices that would have ruled in favor show that there is an obscure rule that potentially could have been used.
He also didn't even, he thought the court might not intervene because it would be a political question. In the political question doctrine prevents them from interfering. So that was his initial plan, at least.
That Trump thought that would be possible.
If you're the progenitor, if you're the originator of the idea, and even you think that you would lose in the Supreme Court, but maybe 2 people will side with you, that doesn't seem like an idea that's hotly contested by experts.
Experts clearly, if 2 of them would agree to it, then maybe you wouldn't win, but it still doesn't mean that the rule isn't worth challenging. There's plenty of cases that lose in the Supreme Court. It doesn't make them not worth challenging.
Do you think it would be in line with American democracy for the president to tell the vice president to ignore the will of the voters and choose who the next president is going to be?
I think that if the will of the voters was ignored by the electoral process,
know,
and if the vote was
okay.
rigged, then yes, absolutely, it would be the responsibility.
Well, I think
of the
technically it would have eventually gone to the Supreme Court, but I think technically the original court that would have had jurisdiction was the District of Columbia, or it's the district court for the District of Columbia. I think it was probably where they thought it would go originally. Now, what's funny is that this memo mentions that Professor Eastman's proposal is strongly in tension with the decision handed down yesterday by the district court for the District of Columbia and the Wisconsin Voters Alliance litigation, civil action number blah whatever. The essence of Professor Eastman's proposal is that disputes between competing slates of electors should not be referred for decision to the House and the Senate, or determined based on certifications made by state executives. Rather, he contends that they must be referred to and decided by state legislators. But whereas the former procedures are provided for by the Electoral Count Act, Eastman's proposed course of action has never occurred in the history of the United States. In Bush v. Gore, yeah, blah, 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 blah. Where did they make the ruling? In Wisconsin Alliance, the court held that plaintiffs' theory that Electoral Count Act is unconstitutional and that the court should instead require state legislators themselves to certify every presidential election lies somewhere between willful misreading of the Constitution and fantasy. So that's what this had already essentially, I don't want to say had already been struck down, or already been disputed by the District Court of Columbia.
President of the United States.
The District Court for the District of Columbia. Dumbass name.
To actually put that forward to protect democracy in this country. Depends on how you look at it. If it were Donald Trump who subverted the election and Kamala Harris actually wins, and you believe in your mind, or you know for sure that she actually won, wouldn't you want them to challenge that? Wouldn't you want them to try to do whatever they could to preserve democracy? The only reason you're against it is because of the person. And you've got to look deeper than that. It's got to be about the actual process.
Because of the person or
Donald
because
Trump
of
might
the
not be your
lies?
guy or my guy, but nonetheless, the process needs to be protected.
Yes, I agree with that. You already said that you don't know the process, so I don't know why you're appealing to the process. Donald Trump did try to challenge the election with 64 different court cases. He won one of them in an inconsequential Pennsylvania case that didn't really impact much of the vote at all. He lost the other 63. He was shot down in the Supreme Court a number of times, and he was shot down when he tried to present false evidence to state legislatures a number of times. Everywhere that he tried the process, he lost, and that ended up with him begging Pence to basically just choose him as the winner of the election. At what point can we not say this is probably anti-democratic?
How is that anti-democratic? He went through the process. If you challenge things in court and you lose in court,
but then after the process,
just because you lost doesn't mean that you're doing anything.
He exhausted the process, and then after that he went to some non-constitutional means, we'll say. So one might call it criminal conspiracy to defraud the United States. One might call it that.
Illegal.
It was illegal to break the ECA. He lost in the courts. That's why he told Pence, I need you to break the law and choose me to be president. That was the process. He went through the courts and he lost. He didn't like the result. And then he asked Pence to choose him to be the winner of the election. This is anti-democratic.
I believe that is part of if that's part of the process, that's part of the process.
Was it part of the process when they had people forge in 7 different states that they were the electors and that they wanted to vote for Trump?
Again, there are a lot of rules with the process. In fact, when the Democrats were upset that Donald Trump had won in 2016, they pursued similar tactics.
Can you name a state where they had a false slate of electors made without the approval of the state legislature?
She's talking about people in Congress who didn't want to certify the election, not the vice president unilaterally. It wasn't Joe Biden unilaterally saying that we shouldn't not certify the election like Trump wanted Pence to do. It was members of Congress, individual members of Congress, disputing that the vote should be certified. That's what it was. That procedure is accounted for in the ECA. It's that was compliant with the ECA. What Trump wanted Pence to do absolutely was not. It was explicitly breaking the ECA.
No. I believe Colorado actually in 2016 did put forward some alternate electors, or even said that they wanted to have a compromise candidate send electors to
also, if the Colorado state legislator sent an alternate slate of electors, that's different than Trump's fake slate of electors.
Do the election and instead put Mitt Romney in as a compromise candidate. I remember
hypothesizing on what a state legislature said that maybe they want to do, maybe they did, is far different than Trump's campaign. That's great that there was push for it. That's great that some people might have pushed for it. Donald Trump and his underlings falsified 7 different slates of electors for Pence to choose on January 6th. This is anti-democratic. What could be less democratic than trying to change the outcome of the election of a state because you don't like the result?
Do you believe that the election results in Venezuela were accurate?
I'm not Venezuelan. I don't care about the results in Venezuela, but we had ways to challenge the results in the United States. Breaking the law and having the vice president choose you to be the president again, surely you can see the conflict of interest there, right? The guy that is president right now is saying that the election was rigged when he's running for election again. I mean, like, why would we trust this person who lost in every other forum?
In 2016, Democrats believed that the elections were rigged.
Hillary, but
Oh
Hillary,
my God.
what's the difference though? In 2016, Hillary conceded that night. Donald Trump said stop the count and try to win the election early. You see
Did
the
Hillary
difference?
really concede,
Yep,
or
she did.
did they? She conceded and then continued to undermine behind the scenes.
I mean, Hillary did. Yeah, Hillary conceded and allowed the whatever transition team the transition to take place. Right? Trump literally refused to allow. I think there's a phrase for it, but like the next administration coming in has to have like a transition phase. Usually that begins right after the election. Trump refused to let that happen until months later.
Donald Trump's presidency, continued to delegitimize it, continued to go after him numerous times over and over after 2016.
You can talk to people however you want. What could be less democratic than Donald Trump?
For only 11 weeks, the transition is delayed. A transition delayed is a transition denied. Yeah,
Telling Pence, I want you to make me the president again. I'm not happy with these court results. I'm not happy with what's going on. I need you to choose me again to be president.
I don't think that's actually a clear characterization of what really happened.
It is absolutely what happened. It is
Well, from
verbatim.
your perspective,
No,
but I
from
don't
the
think
perspective
from
of
the
every single
perspective-
person involved. That's why Eastman, after it failed, was emailing Giuliani saying like, hey, you remember that pardon list? I think I do need to be stuck on that. I think I'm going to need some pardons preemptively just in case. This is why Giuliani and Sidney Powell are being sued. It's why they've admitted that they lied about the voter fraud. It's why a lot of them are being disbarred now. Yes, this all happened. It's a very public record, very open testimonies under oath. Yes, all of this happened. So do you agree that Donald Trump telling the vice president, can you make me president again? That's like the least democratic thing you could ever do in a democracy.
I think that if you think that the election was rigged, I think that it is your responsibility to protect
Oh my
democracy.
God.
So you think that Donald Trump should have tried to
I
steal
don't
the
want
election if
to,
he thinks that
forgive me, I just want to I want to give you a chance to each of you to get any last thoughts on this, but then I want to redirect us back to Kamala Harris per se.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. I just think when we talk about democracies, the Democratic Party or the Republican Party could literally right now say, oh, here's my candidate. We're going to put this guy forward, and then you guys can vote for them or not in the general election. Both parties have a right to do that. They're private parties. They can do whatever they want, basically. The idea that Kamala Harris, who was the vice president, who was on the ticket, that delegates that switch from Biden to Kamala Harris is somehow anti-democratic. You don't have to vote for them in the general if you don't want to. Nobody's forcing you to do that. But somehow Donald Trump telling the vice president, hey, I need you to just pick me as the president. I need you to pick me and ignore, the will of the actual voters of the American population and just pick me to be the president again because I'm not happy with the results of the last election. That is the least democratic thing you could ever do in a democracy.
I think it was to delay in order to allow for more counting. I don't think it was just install me
Allow
as
for more
president again
counting?
and anoint me as president.
It was.
Instead was a tactic to delay in order for the challenges to go through the
The
courts.
challenges had gone through and they'd all lost. All
They-
64
yeah, I was gonna
cases,
say
the
they
results by
already
then,
lost all the
nothing
court
live,
cases.
Everything was dead. It was completely gone. That's why they wanted him to just choose him to be president again during the January 6th counting ceremony. Yeah.
Forgive me, Kim. I'm sure you've got a round in the chamber ready to fire, but I do want to just redirect us just back to Kamala Harris per se.
Okay, so regarding Kamala Harris, it is an undemocratic process to anoint the next
Oh my
person.
God.
Even if the Democratic Party is allowed to do this because they are a private company, I understand that the courts have ruled in that way. Shouldn't that bother you? If you are somebody who actually wants to protect democracy, it doesn't matter if these are private companies, if these are private corporations. They're supposed to be championing and standing for democracy. And in fact, that is something that the Democratic Party claims that they are holding the torch for, is democracy. Yet what they do is they completely undermine the voters. Kamala Harris has the lowest rating ever of any vice president in the history of this country. And yet they anointed her as vice president without even an open primary. They didn't have an open primary, nor did they have an open convention that would have allowed at least the electors to vote for other people. They didn't even allow that. They just said, Kamala Harris is our person. This is a person you're
Well,
going to have to vote for. And they didn't give you a
The
choice.
delegates could have done whatever still, right? And actually, weren't there like 48 uncommitted Democrats or uncommitted delegates, whatever?
That is completely against democracy.
I have a choice. I can vote for whoever I want in the general election, so you're completely wrong there. The goal of the party is to put forth a candidate that is the most likely to win the election. I think that the Democratic Party choosing the person who's on the ticket that won more votes in any presidential election in all of history is probably better than trying to have an open primary and having us devolve into a crazy, shit show for a month trying to figure out who the next candidate is going to be. I think the DNC choosing Kamala Harris probably gives them the best chance to win in the general, and I'll be voting for Kamala Harris because she was part of the ticket that all the other Democrats voted for on the last election. If you're not happy with that or if you don't like that, that's fine, but it's not anti-democratic because nobody is forcing you to vote that ticket. If you want, vote for somebody else or just don't vote at all or have a protest vote or whatever, and the DNC would probably never do that again. The idea that it was anti-democratic for the DNC to pick the path that they wanted to put forth who they felt was the best candidate, which traditionally they do with the delegate process or an open primary, but this time because of extenuating circumstances, they just went with the vice president who was already on the ticket. I think to call that anti-democratic is silly. There's nothing anti-democratic about that. Nobody's forcing you to vote for Kamala in the general election.
Oh, how else are you going to vote? Who would you vote for then? Who are your options?
I could not vote.
Jill
I could vote for Trump.
Stein.
Vote for what Jill Stein or the Libertarian candidate. You vote for whoever you want to vote for. It's the United States of America.
So you don't think that the party that is saying we are the party for democracy and then completely subverting that democracy and not even listening to the will of the Democratic voters and instead just giving them, force feeding them a candidate, you think that that is fine, that's democracy?
Standing for democracy is not what you do inside of a company. Democracy is not what happens in the McDonald's manager's office. Democracy is what we do to protect the institutions of the United States of America while we're expressing our will through the structures of our government. The Democratic Party, as a private party, their goal is to put up the candidate that they think can win best. When the Democratic Party talks about protecting democracy, they're not talking about the internal primary process or how they put delegates to different candidates. They're talking about defending democracy in the United States of America as part of the U.S. government. So their goal should be to put up the strongest candidate. There aren't a ton of people in the Democratic Party that hate Kamala Harris and are mad that they put her up. There are some extreme people, or there are some outsiders that are trying to say that it should be different, but Kamala was part of the most winning ticket in all of presidential history. If anything, I think I'd be more upset if I was a Republican and I saw that Donald Trump didn't even debate the other Republican candidates because he was so scared of now, as we've seen, being exposed as a delusional, insane old man that can't even hold his composure on stage. Donald Trump didn't have a single debate with Haley or with DeSantis. And you're going to say that process was somehow more democratic? No, they're private parties. But the Republican Party can choose their nominee however they want as well. I don't care. It's their private parties.
They decided to actually listen to voters. That's how they did it. They decided to let people vote and decide. Nikki Haley put up a fierce campaign. So did Ron DeSantis. So did many others. And ultimately, the voters decided that they didn't care to hear a debate between Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis or Donald Trump and Nikki Haley. The voters decided, not the top-down elites sitting in a back room deciding who was going to be their best candidate. They didn't really want Donald Trump. There was a lot of internal chatter inside of the Republican Party.
They're still barely even talking about Kamala Harris. They're still on the same topic.
So you're saying that in order to protect democracy, so you're saying in order to protect democracy, it is totally fine to not allow the democratic process with the people in order to protect democracy. So then what in your mind is democracy?
It's not how private parties put forth their candidate.
What's democracy?
Democracy is a very broad idea that expresses different forms of government that usually involve some form of the population voting. And in the United
States,
they
vote on?
We could vote on a presidential candidate. We could vote on legislators.
What a dumb line of argument. Oh my God, we're really going down
for policies. I mean.
So is it a democracy if, let's say, both parties just decide that they're going to nominate the same exact candidate and we're all going to have one choice? And they have the freedom to do that because they're both corporate private entities. So let's say they decide that they're both going to put forward their
anyone who would also have the ability to make their own political party nominate whoever they want as well, right?
And that's who we get to choose, and there's nobody else on the ticket. Is it democracy just because we do get to go through the process of casting the vote for the one person that's available to us?
Other people could run for president. Nobody's forcing you to vote for that candidate. Correct. You could do write-ins. You could vote for another person. You don't have to vote for who the two major parties nominate. You understand that how private companies do things it has nothing to do with democracy, right? Like the DNC could say, we are going to do a survey across the United States of America, and we're going to make the tallest person in America our candidate. That would have no impact on our democracy. I imagine a lot of people would be upset. I probably just wouldn't vote for the Democratic ticket, and I'm sure another party would arise if we believe in free market capitalism and freedom and all that. I'm sure another party would come up and they would offer a better candidate. That has no impact on our democracy. Nobody's forcing me to put this person in government. This is just the candidate they're putting up. And again, I don't think we disagree. Kamala Harris was part of the ticket that got more votes than any other presidential ticket in the entire history of the United States. So why would I want them to do an open primary with a month to go and then have the entire party descend into chaos? Would that be more democratic to allow a whole bunch of people to come in and a whole bunch of crazy stuff to happen? Would we be more unified in 1 month afterwards? No, I think the DNC made the correct choice. The majority of the Democratic voters seem to think that they made the right choice. The fact that the Republican Party is currently in free fall, I think means that most people think the Democratic Party made the right choice. So yeah, I think it was a good choice. And if you don't like it, just don't vote for him. There's no impact on our democracy.
This is the most bizarre argument. I'll just let you. I'll let
Great
you have
response.
that one because ultimately, I think you just argued against yourself. This is not. You just described anti-democratic processes and trying to claim that it's democracy. I don't even know how to go with that.
When a supervisor tells an employee that they need to clock out because they're going to get overtime, is that anti-democratic?
Companies are not democracies.
They can be.
Wait.
Oh, now who's arguing against themselves? Wow, good one, dude.
You're right.
Nice
I
one.
agree with you. I agree with what you just said. Companies are not democracies. Okay, the RNC and the DNC are private companies. That's all they are. And I agree with you. They're not democracies.
They're private companies that should not be running as private companies, especially when one of them in particular champions itself as the torch bearer for democracy.
So what, we should pass laws in Congress that make the parties part of our constitution, or we imbue them in law somehow? Like, what does that even mean?
I think that there should be some laws that say that these political parties, if they are going to be political parties putting forth political candidates, that they do have to operate on the basis of democracy, that they should not be operating on the basis of being a private company, that even if they are private corporations, they are still participating in a certain marketplace, the marketplace of democracy, and they need to follow democratic processes in order to participate in that marketplace. Otherwise, start a different company, be a different type of corporation, sell a product.
If you want to do,
different.
I mean, if you want to do that, that's fine. But like, we would have to change the entire process. Like, primaries aren't even really. Yes, absolutely. What do you think that a primary is even that democratic? How many people vote in the primaries? What, like 10 or 11 million people? What's democratic about people campaigning for Iowa and New Hampshire because they just arbitrarily happen to be the first two states?
Like, all the states do their primaries differently. Some of them have open primaries, some of them have semi-open primaries, some of them are closed primaries. Iowa, New Hampshire, I think Iowa mandates. I'm pretty sure that they have the first caucus, like, you know.
You know, that are casting votes. What's democratic about a caucus, right? A bunch of people standing around and raising their hand and doing, you know, A's and nays. Like, come on, or I's and nays. Like, no, the idea that the primary process is some holy vanguard of democracy is silly. When it historically, you know, over 100 years ago, I don't think parties had primaries for candidates. They literally just put a candidate forward. And we were closer in time then to our founding fathers than we are now. So this idea that we're less democratic because of how the primary process, these are private companies. They can put forth candidates however they want. If you don't like it, don't vote for it.
So, okay. I mean, it's if you're going to participate in a democracy, this is kind of like the argument about when certain companies don't want to give services to certain groups of people. They don't like gays, for example, so they don't want to sell services to gays. What the Supreme Court decides is if you're going to have an open business to the public, you have to serve the public. That is, you can't just decide just because you're a private company that you're going to do things your way. There are certain rules to the game. There's got to be rules to the democratic game. If you're going to participate and make a corporation that's going to be participating in the marketplace of democracy, then you need to be democratic in the way that you operate. You can close your primaries to only those who are registered voters, but you should be, but typically what they're supposed to be doing and what we think they're supposed to do, but of course the legalities are a little bit different, is they are supposed to have primaries in each state or caucuses, and people are allowed, if they're especially registered for those parties, to vote in those primaries. Of course, the state doesn't really have to do that. They can, I mean, the parties don't really have to do that. They can, as you mentioned, they are private companies, but just because they can get away with these types of things does not mean that we should allow it or condone it in any way or say this is fine, we're okay with it. We should never be okay with a lack of democracy.
When you say we should never be okay with it, so then for the wait, real quick, for the 150 years or whatever that this country didn't have primaries, then were we not a democracy then? We just became a democracy like a few decades ago or whatever. Like what this argument is nonsense. Like primaries have nothing to do with whether or not you are a democracy. How you serve the public has nothing to do with whether or not a company is a democracy. Like this argument is disconnected at every single level. A party can put forth a candidate however they want. Yeah.
On this particular topic, I want to give Kim the last word, and then I do want to examine someone in the chat said, hey, we really want to hear what you guys both think on Kamala and the economy particularly. Go ahead, Kim.
Okay, I don't know what democracy is then. If democracy
I bet she has some good takes there.
People voting for what they want to vote for, getting the candidates in that they want to represent them, getting the policies in that they want to represent them. That to me is democracy, and I think that's the definition to most people. So to say that, well, it doesn't really matter. The democracy is you have the right to vote. You could just vote for, you could write somebody in who you know will never ever win, and they just anointed a person is completely antithetical to democracy.
I want to jump into this. Kamala, would Harris be a benefit for the economy? Would this be, maybe the economy would just be sustained, in other words, maintained at where it is, or would it become worse? What do you guys think?
I think that it's hard to predict what a Trump economy would look like because Trump has given basically no policy positions whatsoever. Even though Kamala is a bit to the left of me, I trust her on the economy more because I think that Democrats tend to hold their own accountable. I think that Democrats tend to put a little bit more restraint if a candidate suggests something crazy, but Republicans are completely and totally unable to hold Trump accountable because the entire party is obsessed with Donald Trump. So if Donald Trump says something insane, like he wants to put 10 or 20% tariffs on every import in the world, the entire Republican Party is absolutely silent on it because nobody can say anything to counteract anything he says because, you know, so Donald Trump is going to try to bully them out of office and turn them into a rhino and destroy their career. So I definitely trust the Democrats more on economic policy right now because Donald Trump is insane. I don't even know if he knows what a tariff is, and I haven't heard anything very compelling from Donald Trump when it comes to economic policy.
I think we just look at where we are right now as an economy. We're just definitely worse off. We have much higher inflation. Under Biden, it has reached a peak of 9%. Under Donald Trump, I believe that the average inflation was about 1.8, so it's a lot lower. We look at unemployment and jobs. We can't, the COVID pandemic, we can't really count that in. It's
unemployment and jobs? What do you mean? Biden has been way better for that. What?
Unfair to say how many jobs were lost during the pandemic and then how many jobs were regained. But now we've leveled out. We can look at where we're at today in 2024 or even in 2023 comparatively to under Donald Trump in 2018 and 2019. And I think there's no doubt that we are worse off economically by all measurements today than we were in 2018 or 2019.
I'm sorry, real GDP growth is higher than pre-COVID projections. Like, really? I think we Americans just saw their first gain in real income. Americans see first gain in real income. Like hourly wages are up a lot, especially for the bottom 10% of workers. Their wages grew really fast because the labor market was so tight during the COVID pandemic. Yeah, U.S. median household rose to $80,000, the first significant increase since 2019. Yeah, inflation is back down. Like,
Yeah, there's this unfortunate reality that every time a Democrat comes in office, we basically have to clean up the insane disaster left to us by the last Republican president. When it was Obama, it was having to clean up the disaster of
and prime age employment is literally at like a 40-year high as well. So
like financial crisis, and when it was Biden, it was trying to clean up the disastrous response that Trump had to COVID. So is the economy worse off now than it was in like 2018? I mean, it depends on which indicators or which metrics you're looking at. There are definitely some things that are harder. Inflation was definitely an issue relating to COVID. But one thing that I noticed was curiously absent from Kim's answer here was, what is Trump going to do about it? There were no policy positions given. There were just statements made about the state of the economy. Donald Trump did massive deficit spending that, of course, would contribute to the inflation that we felt a few years later. Donald Trump slashed taxes. He cut government revenue, and he didn't actually decrease any of the government spending. He ran the highest budget deficits for no reason of any president in all of history. At least Biden can say, well, I was dealing with COVID. I had to do something. Trump just ran massive deficits because he wanted to, because it was the popular thing to do. When the Fed talked about raising rates, he tried to bully them on Twitter. So, yeah, of course, anytime you go to government that's willing to just spend like crazy and reduce the amount of money they take in, of course, the economy is going to be booming. But I mean, if you print a ton of money, you just give it to people for no reason, of course, the economy is going to be booming. What are the policies that Donald Trump is suggesting now that would help Americans going forward? And what do we think about this tariff idea? He keeps saying 10% tariffs, 20% tariffs on everything. How is that just...
And please mention the Federal Reserve independence. Please mention the Federal Reserve independence. It's a horrible and inflationary idea.
Just not going to boost inflation even more.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of the tariff idea. I don't agree with Donald Trump on that. But going back to Harris and Harris's policies and whether or not she has anything that's going to be boosting the economy, I mean, to say that the Democrats are here now cleaning up Republicans' mess, it's an odd way to clean it up. With record inflation, and we've got a record now gig economy, so people are not able to get full-time jobs with benefits. They're instead having to hustle, having 2-3 jobs. This is an odd way to clean up the mess. So if this is their idea of cleaning it up, I think most Americans agree that they would like to see some change. So, maybe Trump, it's unclear exactly what maybe he would do to now clean up Democrats' mess. But I think that just the option for change and potentially the ability to lower inflation, to better the economy, to better our lives, people, I think, are willing to take that risk if the alternative is more of the same.
Yeah, so all I heard was there was one Trump policy I've heard of called tariffs, and I don't like that, and I don't know what else it would do, but hopefully it would be better.
What I'm saying is that what exactly did Biden and Harris do? That
Biden and Harris managed. I mean, they managed COVID decently well. Yeah, there was inflation, but there was less inflation in the United States compared to the OECD, compared to the G7, compared to like every other.
Yeah, and our GDP growth is way higher.
Western country in the world, we're doing better than basically everybody else right now. Yeah, there was inflation. There was inflation worldwide. COVID was a huge worldwide stimulus given to every single country on the planet. So of course, there's definitely going to be inflation felt. And Donald Trump didn't do anything to help inflation. Why would I think Donald Trump could help inflation?
He passed 2 stimulus bills. Part of the reason that inflation spiked so much under Biden's term is because when people were given stimulus checks under Trump, they didn't spend that money immediately. The money went into their excess savings, and they only spent it later on as the economy sort of reopened in 2021 and 2022. If you look at Americans are spending. So, a lot of Americans either save the money or use the stimulus checks to spend or to pay down debt. Rather, paying down debt can actually reduce the money supply. So that's why it wasn't necessarily inflationary then. But as the economy reopened, people were able to spend more money. You can see these are the stimulus checks, right? Yeah, but household debt as a percentage of GDP is down. There was another statistic too as well that was really good. I forget what it was. There's two big things. Like household. I remember household debt as a percentage of GDP. So that's total household debt of every household in the U.S. As a percentage of GDP has decreased quite significantly. There was something else. I don't remember, though.
When he had a booming economy and he didn't manage to cut the deficit. Donald Trump couldn't manage the budget when the economy was exploding. Why would I think he could manage the budget when the economy is having trouble? And now you've got the Fed.
Real wages are rising. GDP growth is higher. Yeah, it's just this. Americans have hoarded excess cash. You can see a lot of it was being spent in 2021 and 2022. Prime employment population, all-time highs, unemployment, all-time lows. And what's really impressive, kind of impressive, I think it was always going to happen because I think inflation was always going to be transitory. But we managed to bring down inflation. Really, this is more of the Fed than the government. But inflation was able to decrease significantly without unemployment increasing significantly. We just started finally easing monetary policy with the rate cuts we had yesterday. And because inflation is back down, but unemployment is still only at 4.2%. It was under 4% for 27 months straight.
Fed actually announcing that they're going to be cutting rates because inflation has come under control. So it seems like the administration is heading in the right direction. Why would I trust Donald Trump, whose only economic policy he's put forth would increase inflation, which are tariffs? Why would I trust him to do anything good? Can you articulate like a single policy that you think Trump would do that would be good for the average American, that would actually help the economy?
Well, I can tell you what he wouldn't have done that Democrats did do that actually crushed our economy. That actually...
So the answer is no. Just say the answer is no. See, you got to say the answer is no, and then but I can tell you such and such.
Especially economies around the world during COVID in particular, and that was government shutdowns. That was Democrats with their Democratic governors, and they were taking directives from top down.
Wait, Democratic governors? How is the Democratic governor, or how's Trump going to do anything about Democratic governors? What?
Closing the economy. Of course, when you close the economy, you're going to end up with a lot of ramifications that are going to be very damaging to an economy. And that is not something that any Republican or Donald Trump advocated for. So I can tell you that, yes, the world economy, everything was very bad. Under Biden, things have been bad with COVID. I don't know exactly what you think they did to clean up COVID or to help during that crisis, when actually all of the decisions, in particular lockdowns, have led to massive disaster.
Who do you think was the president during the majority of the lockdowns?
Who do you think actually directed the lockdowns?
Okay, the answer was Donald Trump. The answer was Donald Trump. So Donald Trump was the president during the majority of lockdowns, number one. Number two, when you say, what did the Democrats do? I mean, we could look at a ton of different things. They had the child tax credit, something that Kamala Harris wants to bring back. The child tax credit slashed childhood poverty by 50%, 54%. It was a huge boost to working families. What else did they do? Biden passed legislation to make meaningful change and meaningful investments in our ability to manufacture microprocessors with the CHIPS Act, the ability to reinvest in our infrastructure. With the infrastructure bill, a bill that Donald Trump wanted to get passed, but he couldn't in the 4 years that was here. He actually managed to pass a bill that tried to offset the spending of the bill with new tax receipts, with the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act. I mean, what didn't they do? I mean, the Democrats tried their best, and I think we've seen the results of that. The United States is crushing the rest of the world due to actual legislation that I can articulate and actual policies that I can articulate. Donald Trump just rode off of an economy that was already booming under the last few years of Obama. We've been posting all-time highs in the S&P 500 and the Dow Jones for since I think 2013, and all Trump did was came in and he spent more, and then bullied the Fed when they talked about raising rates because they were getting worried about inflation, and then here we are. Again, you can't articulate a single policy or a single thing that Donald Trump would do. You're mad at shutdowns that happened under Donald Trump.
I'm not arguing for Donald Trump. We're arguing against Kamala Harris, very specifically. I am not for Donald Trump. I'm not voting for Donald Trump. Let me just make that extremely clear. So I'm not arguing on behalf of Donald Trump. I'm arguing against Kamala Harris. What we know is that Democrats have done a very piss poor job of actually managing the economy. We are worse off today by
real wages are the middle. I mean, wow, great. Oh, look at real wages going up. Although I should if you look at the graph earlier, during the spike in inflation, we did see a period where wage growth was outpaced by inflation. But by now, it's back to they're about matched here, and then it's slightly higher here. This is hourly earnings versus weekly earnings.
Every single measurement.
But we're better than every other country. We came out of COVID.
Except China.
I don't know exactly what they're doing here. Biden versus Trump percentage points. Are they subtracting?
Came out of COVID better off than every other first world country.
How are we better off? We have now given away boatloads of cash to Ukraine, to Israel. We're giving away our money.
That's a drop in the bucket compared to our budget yearly. Okay, number one. Number two, how are we better off? We're crushing them on our job market and our economy. We're crushing them when it comes to inflation. The USD is probably too strong right now for our exports market. What do you mean, how are we? We're crushing them in every way. You graduate with a computer science degree in the United Kingdom, and the first thing you're trying to do is find a job in the United States. You're trying to work for Amazon. You don't want to get paid 39,000 quid a year working as a programmer in the United Kingdom. What do you mean, how are we doing compared to the rest of the world? How are we beating them? We're beating them in every single conceivable way, except for domestically, we're falling apart because of conservatives' refusal to accept reality. I think this conversation is a good example of that. The Harris policies that they continue what Biden was doing, I think they put us on a good track. And it'd be cool to see what Democrats can do when they're not just trying to recover from the disasters left to us by the last Republican administration.
So you're arguing that you really believe that the average American is better off today than they were under Donald Trump?
I don't know if they're better off today than they were under Donald Trump, but that's because we had COVID. The question isn't whether or not we're better off today than we were 4 years ago, because we can't go back in time. Time only moves in one direction. The question is would we have been better off with 4 more years of Trump? Probably not. I don't think so. There's zero indication that that's the case.
Also, I mean, by now, there are a few metrics where we are better off. Yeah.
And then the question would be, in the next 4 years, are we going to be better off with Trump or with Harris? And I see no reason. Donald Trump couldn't pass any big
Does Kim not know the money we give Israel and Ukraine are not dollar bills? Is military equipment that would have? Yeah, I know. Yeah, a lot of it literally, some of the aid we give to Ukraine literally saves us money. Yeah, I mean, it's a dumb talking point, but yeah, like, you're right. Like some of the aid we give to Ukraine actually saves us money because it's like artillery shells that are like expired, and we otherwise would have had to. We would have had to dispose of them, which costs money, versus just giving them to Ukraine. It's free. So
big bills or any legislation, even if somebody said he wanted to get done, you can even repeal the ACA so he can control any of his spending.
And I mean, it's also dumb because that money goes to like U.S. companies. It goes to supporting U.S. jobs. There's an opportunity cost of that money, of course, but like it's going to U.S. It's going to Lockheed Martin, who then pays its engineers a lot of good money. So.
Dude was spend. Donald Trump's just, and the only major policy platform he's talking about are tariffs on everything. So why would I think Donald Trump would be good? The stock market is posting all-time highs, or unemployment is still low. The Fed wants to cut rates. Every economic indicator is looking positive. I don't know what to say. What could Donald Trump possibly do? What's wrong with what Harris wants to do?
What's wrong with what Harris wants to do is just continue where we're at right now, which a lot of Americans don't want to be in, which is high inflation.
Inflation has come down. The Fed wants to cut rates. Why would the Fed be talking about cutting rates if inflation was still too high?
Yeah, it's a good question why they want to cut rates just weeks before an election. It's really a good question.
I knew everyone does this now. It's so dumb.
They want to do that, a record cut to the rates.
Is the implication that the Federal Reserve is beholden to the Democratic Party? It's an independent operation of banks. What do you mean? I mean, we can do conspiracies if we want.
Well, they're definitely beholden to the establishment. They're part of the establishment. And Harris is certainly the establishment candidate compared to Donald Trump. So I think they would have a reason for wanting to maintain an establishment candidate in the White House. But when it comes to Kamala Harris,
hold on. To be clear, what you are just blindly and conspiratorially suggesting, that's what Donald Trump actually tried to do, right? Your implication is that somehow the Fed is making political decisions. You know that Donald Trump was trying to force them to make political decisions, right? Then when Donald Trump took to Twitter and took to the bully pulpit as the president, he was attacking the Fed he did it repeatedly. For talking about raising rates. He was attacking the Fed for that. That's what Donald Trump tried to do. What you're asserting with zero evidence that Biden and Kamala, do you not believe the inflation rates that are being posted? Do you think that's all?
Jerome Powell has gone on record, by the way, saying that Trump did call him a number of times. Biden has not. Biden has never called Jerome Powell. He's so lonely now.
So the Federal Reserve is acting on nothing, and nobody in our economy can see that? Or
those leaks were real? Yeah, of course they were real. Yeah.
It's interesting then, if you really believe, and maybe you're right, that the Fed completely operates completely independently from any political influence whatsoever, the fact that they feel like they need to do a rate cut this big, what does that tell you?
What do you mean a rate cut this big?
This is a very large rate cut.
No, it's not.
This is a large rate cut. They don't do just half a point out of nowhere. They usually do a quarter of a point, not a half a point. That's actually quite a large rate cut.
No.
For them to be doing that right now shows that they believe the economy is in dire straits under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, that they have to take drastic measures in order to correct it.
No. Hold on. I'm so sorry.
Why are they doing it?
Wait. What do you think? What are the two things that the Federal Reserve try to manage?
She doesn't know. She doesn't know. She doesn't know.
Okay. The Federal Reserve tries to balance unemployment and they try to balance inflation. Okay. These are the two indicators that the Federal Reserve looks at to determine how they should set rates. If inflation is getting really, really, really low, then the Federal Reserve is going to cut rates because we should have some amount of inflation to keep the economy healthy and moving. That's how the Federal Reserve makes decisions. And then it also looks at unemployment. If unemployment is getting too high, then they might cut rates. It just depends. Like these are the two things. But balancing out unemployment and inflation are the two. That's the mission statement of the Federal Reserve. How could you accuse the Federal Reserve of acting in a politically partisan way? You don't even know what the mission of the Federal Reserve is. You're just saying random things.
I'm dropping that accusation. I'm asking you why did they do the rate cut?
Because they feel like inflation has come down significantly.
So they want to boost it back up?
Yes.
You think that's exactly why?
What Destiny says is partly correct, but it's also because they don't want the labor market to weaken even more. They think the labor market right now is in a good spot right now, which is what they try to balance inflation and unemployment. They think the labor market right now is in a good place, and they want to keep it that way, which is why they're cutting rates. They don't necessarily want to bring inflation up. But yeah, I mean, if inflation is too low, they do want to bring it up. But
so they did a rate cut because they want inflation.
Do you know which video he was watching? I mean, you can go to the website he was on was called Nude Africa. Smoking in that communist Paul Castro right now. Base. Thank you. Amazing.
What do you think the goal inflation percentage is? You have no idea. You realize you have no idea. You're laughing because you think inflation should be at 0%. Ideal inflation is 2%. What do you think unemployment should be? 0%? Yes, correct. 2% is the target. That's correct. And if they feel like we're undershooting that target, then they try to preemptively cut rates or raise rates because it takes a little bit for the Federal Reserve policy, for the federal funds rate to actually impact with the trading of all the securities and everything else later on. So yes, that's why they're doing it. We can all look at the inflation rate. We can all look at the unemployment. These numbers are all posted publicly. Everybody looks at them. So I mean.
So the economy's so great. So you're just saying the economy's great. You want to keep it going the way that it is.
I didn't say the economy. They don't look at the economy. They look at inflation and they look at unemployment.
Which are indicators of the economy and how healthy the economy is.
They could be. They might not be. It just
They are.
depends. They are two indicators, but the goal of the Federal Reserve is not to make the economy good or make the economy bad. The two indicators that they look at are inflation and unemployment. Those are the two things that they're, yeah.
But you're arguing that you think that the economy under Kamala Harris and Joe Biden right now is great and that we should just continue on and that Americans are going to be fine.
Give you a chance to respond,
Yes.
Stephen, but then I do want
Yeah, the response to that is yes, absolutely. Also, not because inflation is low, it's a downward trend. Have a point, companies, the Fed think a slightly larger cut won't put inflation over the target, which is a good thing. Yeah, exactly, yeah.
to jump into a new topic because we're going to go into Q&A about 15 minutes or so.
Sure. Yes, I think obviously I think I've articulated policy. I've articulated economic positions. I've
And she has
articulated
done nothing.
How the economy has rebounded under COVID. I've articulated that the United States is ahead of the rest of the OECD. Every indicator points to the fact that this administration did a phenomenal job coming out of COVID for sure. And the major complaint that you had, the two major complaints I would guess would be like
Good ones
massive
and
deficit spending,
terrorists.
and then the one that you articulated, which was lockdowns, all happened under Donald Trump. So yeah, I do think that the Harris administration would be superior to whatever the Republicans put up.
I want to give Stephen the last word this time, and then I want to go into the next topic, which is Kamala on the border. Who would be better for the
Oh,
border,
man.
Kamala
Oh,
or
boy.
alternative? What do you guys think?
Do you want to go first again, or?
You're arguing for Harris, right?
Yeah, Kamala would be better on the border because we've already seen Biden and the Democrats try to put up a border bill that would address a lot of the border problems. This bill was a Republican-authored bill. It was by Lankford in the Senate. They tried to put it up, and Donald Trump wanted the Republicans to vote it down because he wanted to keep the border open in order to run an election issue. So the idea that the Republicans would try to destroy the border for politically advantageous reasons is the only thing that I need to know to say that I would never trust these guys with any type of security issue, because clearly them winning political battles is more important than them actually securing the border, which we might see coming up soon with the budget. But, yeah.
They've had 4 years. So even if there is some interference that happens closer to an election, they've had 4 years to do something about the border. But instead, their policies have led to a massive wave of people coming through the border, and they have laughed it off. They have shrugged off border issues since Donald Trump was elected in 2016. They claimed it was a conspiracy theory. They chose to do nothing about it. And now it has gotten so bad that they've realized that their own rhetoric, their own policies have led to a severe crisis that even they can no longer ignore. And they're now having to finally do something about it. But part of the reason why we have this border crisis is because Democrats over the last 8 years refused to do anything about it until now. It's just so big of an issue that even Democratic governors and mayors are screaming, please help, this has gone wrong and we really have to do something about it. They let the problem get so
I feel like, by the way, after everything the Republicans have done for the past 2 weeks about immigrants eating cats in Springfield, after all of that misinformation promoted by Trump himself and JD Vance, no shot should a Democrat ever have to come to an immigration conversation, and there's no reason they should concede anything unless their opponent completely disavows all of that stuff, because that is unhinged. There's no way. There's no way to have a reasonable conversation unless they concede. But creative JD Vance's own words, I know, it's so dumb. And Lauren Chen goes with the blame game Jesus, yeah.
so bad because they were trying to score political points all of these years that we're now where we're at to where they have to actually do something about it. So I think just on the merits, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, but Harris
Also,
specifically
welcome,
going forward as president,
Ricky.
the
Welcome
fact that
back.
she ignored these issues for so long, claiming that it was just some sort of a Trump talking point or a MAGA talking point to let it get to this bad, just goes to show that this is not a serious person who's really truly looking to solve America's problems. This is somebody who's actually looking to score political points, the very thing that you're actually accusing them, the Republicans, of doing.
Yeah, I mean,
So I need to do more research on this. I saw it mentioned in a previous debate. There was an immigration bill that Biden wanted to pass in 2021 that would have done some border reforms as well. But I don't know. I don't know nothing about it. Yeah, it would have ended the children in cages. The children in cages that Trump was criticized for, which I don't know enough about. But
we had 4 years of Donald Trump. Where's our immigration bill? Where's our border bill? Where's the wall? Trump did nothing. He had both houses of Congress, and Trump did absolutely nothing about the border. It's funny because Trump says, I ran on immigration because we had problems with the wall. That's not true. Even on Trump's own little stupid chart that he posts, Obama was posting better immigration numbers than he was. So Obama was doing better than Trump on immigration. Trump wants to say it's not fair to count the last year or two, of my administration because COVID messed everything up, but he sure does want to take credit for the lowered immigration numbers under COVID. And then you saw them start to spike back up, even though he lied on his chart for when he was actually out of office. They were spiking up almost to all-time highs right before he left office. So clearly Donald Trump wasn't capable of managing anything at the border. And when Democrats did want to pass something to manage the issue at the border, the Republicans blocked it. It was a good bill. It would have helped a lot with the asylum process. It would have provided more funding for border agents. It would have provided more funding for asylum judges to process people that were here for asylum claims. Everything about that bill was good, and the Republicans blocked it. So Yeah, again, it's like a policy thing. Like, what is Donald Trump going to do about the border? And why would I think that Donald Trump could do whatever he says he's going to do when he can't articulate any plans whatsoever, and he couldn't do it in the 4 years that he was president? Where is my immigration bill? Where's my border bill? Where's my wall from my 4 years of Donald Trump?
Well, Democrats blocked all of that.
The Republicans had the House and the Senate. You can't use that
They
excuse.
didn't have enough of a majority. They didn't have enough of a majority, and they need more. They needed some bipartisan support. Democrats, instead of even taking this situation seriously, laughed at it, scoffed at it, mocked it, claimed it was some sort of political talking point when it was an actual.
So he hasn't, I'm assuming Destiny will go into this a little bit, but again, the big issue right now is our asylum laws are just so fucked that a wall won't even help that much. Like,
real problem. And now it's gotten so bad that Democrats now want to finally do something about it, something that Republicans have been wanting to do for the last 8 years, and Democrats want to pass a bill and then take credit for it. I don't blame the Republicans for wanting to block that to score political points at this juncture when they know that this is something Democrats have been blocking for the last 8 years. Now finally Democrats are on board. Now finally Democrats see that there's an actual real problem, but they only want to do that now that Democratic governors and mayors have been screaming saying, we can't handle this. There's a massive influx and you guys have been ignoring it and treating it like it's some sort of a racist policy to secure the southern border. So, the reason why Donald Trump was unable to get anything through was because Democrats continue to use it as a talking point, as a campaign point, making it about racism rather than a real problem. And here we are today. I don't trust Democrats to fix something when they have been the ones blocking it for the last 8 years.
Okay, well, I mean, you just gave me every reason in the world never to vote for Trump on this issue because you just admitted that Donald Trump can't do it without a supermajority, I guess, in the House and the Senate, which he will never have. So I automatically know that no matter what, Donald Trump will never be able to get anything passed. And so then I have to look at Harris and I have to look at Biden. And when Biden and Harris were supporting this bill, they actually did have support in the House and the Senate. The only reason that it wasn't passed is because Donald Trump, the cancer rotting our country, came in from the outside and said,
they've done a lot of bipartisan legislation, which Trump was never able to do.
Don't pass this bill. I need to be able to talk about Haitians eating dogs and whatever other nonsense I want to make up in order to actually be able to win the next election. So it seems like there was a bill under the Democrats that was ready to pass with support from the legislature. It just didn't because of Donald Trump. And under Donald Trump, there were no bills because Donald Trump can't make deals with anybody. And the fact that he needs a supermajority in both halves of Congress to pass anything is a bigger indictment against his leadership than probably anything I could have said on my own.
Well, I think that you just made the argument, the same exact argument, but against the Democrats, because if Democrats, if a few Democrats, a handful of Democrats, the need for a supermajority is what blocked Republicans, how pathetic is it that one man was able to stop Democrats?
He called us a what? What a unbelievably stupid statement. Oh my God.
Yeah, sure.
Oh my God. How pathetic. The Democrats don't have a majority in Congress right now. The issue is that Republicans are so pathetic that they will do anything to appease Trump. So they will open their asshole and let Trump fucking fuck them so hard that they that's a horrible analogy. Yeah, the issue was Trump literally told his allies in the Senate to not vote for the bill. That was the issue. That is the issue. That the Republicans cuck out to Trump so much still.
Why it wasn't one? It was one man telling all the lawmakers not to vote for that. Yeah, it is an
a lot of
issue.
Power there. I guess he's sitting there wielding his power against the Democrats. I can't get anything done because of Donald Trump.
True. Cults are very powerful. Their leaders, they wield a lot of power. That is how dictators work. Yes.
This might be a good opportunity. One last topic: Harris on crime. What are your thoughts?
For crime stuff, it's kind of hard on the federal level because I feel like crime is a thing that's typically dealt with at the city and state level. I really don't know how much influence anybody can have on the federal level.
That's true. I mean, the big thing you should mention is that crime is not going up. Crime seems to be going down. It's at like 40-year lows. Now, what Republicans will say is, oh, the FBI statistics don't include fucking San Diego and all the big cities. That was true for 2022 because we switched over to a new data collection system. And we didn't include a lot of big cities, which had a lot of crime in 2022. Since 2022, it's been fixed. The numbers from 2022 probably aren't accurate. They probably are an underestimate. But crime on a whole, since then, the percentage of crimes covered by the FBI statistics has gotten back to normal. So... Automod. So, we can know now that crime is actually at a 40-year low. And although Destiny's right, you can't do much at a federal level. I would say like the big thing that Biden did was resist a lot of the defund the police stuff. Right now, who knows? Maybe Harris won't continue it. Although we've moved past the defund the police stuff as a society, no one's talking about that anymore. But I would say the big thing Biden did was support like hiring more police officers and not support the more progressive, like defunding the police stuff.
When it comes to enforcing things relating to crime, I do know that, if I can look at like direct actions that people take, like the mobilization of things like the National Guard, I know that Donald Trump was in charge of the National Guard on January 6th, and he decided not to deploy them for political reasons. So I don't know why I would trust that guy who...
Am I stroking? Is his voice sped up? Yeah, I have it at 1.25 1.25 times speed. Yeah.
Allow some crime to happen as long as it's advantageous to him. I don't know how I'd ever trust that guy in managing anything related to crime. I also don't think I trust Trump on anything that he says for crime, because I know that, for instance, when Wallace was dealing with BLM stuff in his
What?
state, Donald Trump had a lot of nice things to
Not me. I mean, I was speaking fast for a little bit, but
say about him. But as soon as he was running for
are you stroking?
president again, and Wallace was made the VP pick, all of a sudden Donald Trump hated everything that he did. So
I
I don't know if I
don't
can trust
think I
anything
am.
on Trump when it comes to crime. And again, I would challenge, I'd love to hear a single position articulated that Donald Trump has talked about that would help anything related to crime in the United States. But again, I don't know what the president, the federal president, can do in regards to crime.
I think that when we look back at just even Kamala Harris's record on crime as a prosecutor, she has a mixed record. Democrats in general have been very lax on crime. They have advocated for lax criminal policies.
Schrodinger's Kamala Harris. Is she soft on crime, or is she so harsh that she's arresting single mothers for truancy? It's literally Schrodinger's prosecutor.
There was a lot of defund the police chatter. There was a lot of, bail out the people that committed crime during the Black Lives Matter protests, and funds that were created. Democratic policies.
She did
across
retweet one
states
fund
have
to
allowed
bail
for
out
criminal activity. I live in the state of
protesters. Wow,
California. They
can't believe
allow
it.
now a certain amount of criminal activity to go completely overlooked. I think I agree that I'm not sure what the president can really do. I mean, the president doesn't really even have much on, like, when it comes to tax policies, for example. That has to be done through Congress, or even the border policies have to be passed by Congress. There's very little a president themselves.
You know what? The issue is a lot of things Trump wants to do can probably actually be done unilaterally through the executive. So tariffs can be done unilaterally through the executive, because Congress delegated that authority to the president, at least for matters of national security. Now, it's possible that when Trump does his tariffs, the court says, hey, not all these tariffs are for national security reasons. You can't have all of your tariffs, but he would definitely have some of them. And things like potentially restricting abortion. So it's true, like, the president can't ban abortion, right? That's true. However, there's a law called the Comstock Act, Comstock Act. I always pronounce it wrong. Which basically, depending on how it's interpreted, could prevent the mailing of abortion pills to patients, and it could prevent the mailing of abortion the materials required to perform an abortion to doctors. So it could make it significantly harder for women to get abortions, and that can be done unilaterally through the executive without any action from Congress. So there are things like that which are probably concerning. Probably concerning if Trump gets elected.
Actually do without an act of Congress. But when it comes to crime, these are more about, I think, the policies of the platform of the party. And Democrats as a party have run on, we want to allow more criminal activity, essentially, or certain things are not really crimes when they really are. So I think the entire messaging of the Democratic Party, which is, of course, led by now Kamala Harris, is one that is not tough enough on crime. When, interestingly,
does she still live in 2020? Like, where we've moved past this conversation at this point.
Kamala Harris, though, has a very mixed record. When she was a prosecutor, she was known for being quite tough on crime.
Yeah, I don't know if I would trust a guy who's a 34 convicted felon, 34 felony convicted felon who the biggest engagement that he has with law enforcement is, or crime-related stuff, I guess, is giving pardons to literally every single friend that he has who has been convicted of crimes. Some people that are very, very hard to excuse his pardons for. So yeah, I wouldn't trust Trump on anything related to crime.
I think people are more concerned about actual violent crime and theft rather than white-collar crime. So even if...
What was Occupy Wall Street about?
That was something people were obviously very concerned about at the time. But now we're in a different era. You're talking about another decade or 15 years. And here we are with violent crime rampant in the streets. We've got people being able to steal theft up to $900 at a local Walgreens is legalized. So there's a lot of crime happening that are really, truly affecting people. They're afraid. And it's the defund the police movement was very much part of the reason why police forces are not stacked enough with enough staff to handle this rise in violent crime. Why is there violent crime, by the way? Because of inflation.
But
when the economy sucks, crime goes up.
Okay, well, I'm glad we're talking about the socioeconomic factors behind this crime. I'm glad Republicans are all on board that movement now. I want to find the violent crime is rampant in the street thing. It's just not true. It's fallen. I don't know what she's yapping about.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if I think like violent crime I think is lower now I think than it was even at the lowest. I'm pretty sure it is.
No,
I know that
they lied on the
So here's the estimated percent of the population covered in the FBI crime statistics, right? There was a dip when they switched over to a new data collection system. Or this dip is in 2021. Past 2022 is okay. Okay, so this is correct. There was like... There's basically two positions you can have on this. You disagree equals you lie. I know, yeah. Like, I feel like there has to be like some like back room of like Republicans like coming up with like this talking point of like, the percentage of people covered in the crime statistics, dropped. So the crime the crime statistics from 2021 aren't accurate. That's why it shows a dip when maybe there really wasn't one. And then like that gets interpreted by like dumber Republicans. It's just the FBI is lying on crime statistics. It's all fake. It's all made up. So there's kind of like a reasonable position that you could have on this, but the reasonable position is not that the FBI lied. It's that the data from 2021 is going to show a big dip just because the percentage of crimes covered in the statistics dipped, but that's it, yeah. But also like we have things like murder, which murders, I'm pretty sure the reporting on murder was it's always pretty accurate. It's always like the most accurate crime to look at because whenever it's a dead body, like that almost always gets reported and found, right? And we can see murders down. A lot of these crime statistics are down.
Oh, well, if they lied on the statistics, my bad.
Well, if you're only going to collect stats from some states, from a handful of states, rather than all of them, then you can claim that they're lower. Or if you actually change the definition of crime and you say that stealing up to $900 is not criminal, or if people are not reporting...
When you say stealing up to $900 is not criminal, are you talking about stealing up to $900 is counted as a felony, or that it was just a misdemeanor, or that, like, are you saying that you can just steal... I'm pretty sure what you're talking about is people classifying different amounts of theft, the difference between it being a felony and a misdemeanor. I don't think that it being not a crime at all is real. I think you just made that up.
You can look it up.
So I mean, like, that's up to the states, right? Like the states define that. I don't know. I'm sure maybe San Francisco did that, but like
here in California, you can steal up to a certain amount, and you're not going to even if you call the cops, they're not going to show up. So it doesn't matter what
these
you've
are
done.
Two different things, right? Like calling the cops and them not showing up or not having enough people to,
Why aren't there enough cops?
I don't know why there aren't enough workers for anything right now. What do you mean? Unemployment is incredibly low. We're looking for workers in literally every single field. We also don't have enough nurses or doctors.
The police had something to do with that.
No, because in most...
Biden came out strongly against that idea. Early in his presidency, he released a plan to put 100,000 more cops in the streets of America. Yeah. Clearly, like Biden against pressure from his own party, wanted to hire more police officers. So...
Most of the states where they tried defund the police, it was a fucking disaster, and they ended up rolling back basically all of those policies.
Yeah, well, they can't get those cops back. They already left, so now trying to rehire them back has led to a decrease in the police forces. They're not going after a lot of crimes. You call the police, you're going to be waiting on hold for a couple of hours unless it's an active, violent crime that's happening to you right then and there. It is a disaster at this point. So
this is how the police have always worked. Yes, unfortunately, it sucks. But I remember when I had shit stolen from me when I was in fucking high school. If you call the cops, unless you're actually getting murdered right now, the cops will tell you like, hey, listen, come down to the station, we'll file a report, or we can take some notes on the phone, and that's it. You're never gonna hear again. If some shit gets stolen from you, you're lucky if your car gets reported to you. Maybe if it shows up at the right tow yard and they run the VIN and they give you a call or whatever. But yeah, cops don't have time to investigate every single petty crime that ever happens. Usually the priority is going to be responding to violent crime. But that's always. I mean, would it be nice to increase funding to police? Yeah, for sure. But I mean, cities only have so much money. There are different motives.
Biden also
pushing people
tried
to do
that.
The idea that we just want to make it legal to steal stuff. What would even be the incentive for that? Like we're gonna make it
invest in crime prevention and a fairer criminal justice system by including by investing $20 billion in services that address the cause of the crime. Did he announce a specific dollar number for $35 billion to support law enforcement and crime prevention, in addition to the president's $2 billion for these programs? Details of $37 billion. Okay. Put 100,000 additional officers for effective, accountable community policing in our streets.
Make it legal so people can steal things so that we can piss all of our citizens off.
Oh, yeah. $10 billion for 5 years for the cops hiring program.
And lose our elections and did California even do defund the police? Like, was that even a huge thing? Like, was funding for police in California ever even a thing? Like the reduction of funding for police in California, did that ever even happen?
Yeah.
I want to give you a chance to respond, Kim, and then we have one last topic before the Q&A.
I mean, once again, the messaging of Democrats. So it's the messaging of Democrats has been look the other way, defund the police. Violent crime is not a real thing, claiming that violent crime isn't up when in fact they're changing the definitions and manipulating the statistics in order to have it favor themselves, just like they do when they say racism's up, claims of racism are up because they change the definition of what is racism in order to collect more people as, these statistics and lies, right?
Claims of racism? What does that even mean?
But they've definitely been able to manipulate them. Crime is up, and they're not doing anything about it. Democrats have actively campaigned against doing anything about it with defund.
It's just not true. Like
the police.
So most of the stats that I see for violent crime show that violent crime is down now, even compared to where it was under the Trump administration. But I guess we're changing some definitions. I do think it's interesting looking at a Pew Research poll that shows that Republicans are far more concerned with crime than Democrats are, which is interesting to me because I would imagine most of the big cities where the crime is occurring are where Democrats live. So I don't know if it's just Republicans that are sitting in suburbia watching TV that think that violent crime is a huge issue that they're not even experiencing. That's interesting to me that in 2024, 68% of Republicans think that crime should be a top priority, as opposed to 47% of Democrats that are probably more likely to live in cities or big crime areas. So kind of makes me think that's just a talking point coming from the radio that people aren't actually engaging in reality with, at least for the Republican side here. But again, that was my central concern at the very beginning.
This might be a good opportunity to jump into the Q&A. One question coming in from Otto is from Ukraine. Don't you guys think...
I don't know if I really care about the Q&A.